Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.
Because of my brain injury, I've decided to give my pain some purpose, and I want to help other people that are living with brain injury and migraine disease by giving them some hope.
Hello and welcome to Talking Head Pain, the podcast that confronts head pain head on. Hi, I'm Joe Coe, Director of Education Digital Strategy at the Global Healthy Living Foundation and a migraine patient for over 20 years. Today I'm joined by Laureta, the creator of Lit Up My Mind, a website dedicated to sharing resources about traumatic brain injury and migraine. Hi, Laura. Welcome to Talking Head Pain. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Laureta, and I am a survivor of traumatic brain injury. I live with migraine disease. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I created Lit Up My Mind, which is something I'm very passionate about. Because of my brain injury, I've decided to give my pain some purpose, and I want to help other people that are living with brain injury and migraine disease by giving them some hope and resources to help themselves live more fully with what they've been given too. So,
what was it like getting a diagnosis of traumatic brain injury and chronic migraine? Did you get them at the same time? And what was that process?
No, my process was quite a bit different than most people's with traumatic brain injury. With my diagnosis, I was in a car accident, and initially I was diagnosed with a concussion, and I was in the hospital for a few days, and then things just kind of progressed. I was let go, and that was that. But I was in incredible pain, and I started having these horrible headaches, and a lot of the doctors just kind of thought that I was med seeking, and I just kind of got written off by the doctors. And so it was actually 4 years of going to doctors and kind of being written off before I was seen by somebody new, a different provider who was like, oh, wow, something really is going on with her. And they sent me to some different providers and I was reevaluated. And so with that, I was told that I had a brain injury. And it was like with those words, I was validated, and some doors started opening.
So many people talk about that feeling of getting written off and it taking so long to get a diagnosis or to be seen as having a real condition. How did it feel? And what was different with that provider? So how did it feel once you got that validation? And what did that provider do that was different than the other providers during the 4 years where you were not being taken seriously?
I think it was the first time I was seen as like an actual individual. I was being heard, and my problems were real instead of just feeling like I was lying. For so often I was going into these appointments, and when I left, I felt like I was in the wrong and that, I was a bad person almost. This person, this doctor, when I saw him, he actually made me feel like not only did I have a purpose for being there, but like I was finally being heard. And the knowledge of knowing that I was going to get some help was huge. So that was very validating.
And what kept you going? 4 years feeling not validated. A lot of people would just stop trying to see doctors. What kept you going, and what advice would you give to someone who's feeling dismissed by the medical system?
Well, I think part of what kept me going was, in addition to the head injury that I had, some other issues with my body. They finally diagnosed me with something called thoracic outlet syndrome. And they, after the 4 years, they had to do shoulder reconstruction surgery on me. And, being in severe pain, and I was unable to use my right arm, I didn't really have a choice of being able to just let that go. So that was a big part of it. I let the pain kind of drive me in pursuing that.
We ask all of our guests on Talking Head Pain, Laura, to describe their worst migraine attack. What was going through your head? What made you feel? Paint the picture for the people that are listening.
My worst migraine attack actually didn't seem like a migraine attack. It was just ordinary day, and then all of a sudden I was having stroke-like symptoms, and I know that I was unable to move one side of my body and I wasn't able to talk anymore. It was just terrifying. I lived at my mom's house at the time, and we had to call 911, and they had to initiate the stroke protocol when the ambulance came out to the house. And it was just terrifying. I was unable to move. I kind of knew what was going on. My head was absolutely killing me. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move my body. When I got to the hospital, they did the stroke protocol. They ruled out that it wasn't a stroke, but they also didn't know what was going on. And so it wasn't until about 10 hours later that they figured out that it was a complex migraine or hemiplegic migraine. And so I would end up having probably 4 or 5 of those big attacks. Several times I would end up going to the hospital via ambulance. And now I know how to deal with those on my own. And I kind of can feel those coming on, but that was definitely the worst.
Yeah, hemiplegic migraine is something that a lot of people don't understand, and it does look very similar to stroke in a lot of people, and a lot of healthcare providers that aren't specialized might not recognize it. So I'm glad that you got that diagnosis and that you know what it is. You created a website called Lit Up My Mind. Can you share what Lit Up My Mind is and what inspired you to create that resource?
Over those 4 years that I was struggling, I was desperate to find anything that would help with my headaches, and I didn't know what was going on. While I had the headache, I was trying to find resources, and it was really difficult. I was Googling things, and not a huge amount of stuff was coming up at the time. I mean, this was 11 years ago now. I decided, I had a notebook and I was just keeping track of all of the websites that I was finding. And I decided a few years ago that there had to be a better way to help people that were in a similar situation. Either they had a brain injury or they had migraine disease, because it is so hard to keep track of all of the information that is out there and just find it. So I decided to create this website where I put all of the best resources that I have found over the years into one convenient spot. And then people can just look, and it's kind of by categories. There's the brain injury stuff, there's migraine stuff, and then each of those is broken down into categories. And there's a lot of really good information. And because this is such a new site, I'm still kind of learning how to build a website, actually, but more is going to be coming soon. There's a lot more. I'm going to be adding wellness and mental health information and so much more. I'm really excited about it. But because of my own headaches, things are being added slowly. So
That's amazing. And for folks that want to check it out, it's litupmymind.com. I was really humbled and I smiled when I saw that you had listed Talking Head Pain as one of the resources on the website. What drew you to the podcast before we connected?
I watched you interview Sean, a retired Canadian vet from the migraine support group Chronic Migraine Awareness Inc. Went on and I watched you talk to him over Zoom, and I just really enjoyed it. And so I started listening to the Talking Head Pain podcast, and I decided, there's so many ways to get our resources, and there's so many ways to connect to people. It's so valuable to not feel alone. And migraine can make you feel so isolated and alone, because I know for myself, so much of my time I'm laying in the dark or in a dark room and in the quiet because of my pain. And so I think it's important that we don't do that so much. And if it's something like listening to a podcast so that we feel connected to other people who have experience with the similar issue and we can learn from their experience, hearing their stories or hearing tips and tricks that might help. I think it's incredibly valuable. And the fact that you don't have to read, that was huge too. Having a headache, but being able to just sit there and listen was a big factor too.
So, Laura, I see that you run a virtual game meetup called Brain Busters. That's a really cool initiative. Why are events like that important, and what have you learned by doing them?
Brain Busters is something I'm really excited about. With COVID, there was so much sadness that came with it, obviously, but so much wonderful, positive things came with Zoom. And so I took that and ran with it. And so Brainbusters was just an idea I had after a birthday celebration with some friends when we played games for my birthday. And I thought, this would be a great thing to do for brain injury people, because for myself, I'm only allowed 6 visits with speech therapy a year. And I saw that the games that we played had a lot of the same skills that we could build on and practice while we played. And then add to that the community aspect. And so many people are alone, not just because of the COVID aspect right now, but in their illness or with brain injury. It's a very isolating thing between transportation issues, because so many people with brain injury can't drive or being limited because of their injuries. So I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity for people to start to meet each other and have a little bit of fun. And I really, truly believe that if you can laugh a little, it will help your pain. Like just having an escape, just a few minutes a day, just having that is so important. So I decided to just try that out, and it's been a big hit. We have someone from Canada in the group. We have people from all over different states. We have the core group from Colorado, and then we have people from all over, and people are really responding well to it.
Amazing. We've dabbled in some games at GHLF and one of our organizations called Creaky Joins. We did a bingo event, which was really fun. And actually, you talked about laughing and not taking life too seriously and having fun. Our president and co-founder was the bingo caller, and he dressed up as Elvis. And that was quite the exciting moment, and everyone loved it. We host something called Creaky Kitchen that people can find, where it's a person in the chronic disease community talking about a recipe or what food has meant to them, or like tradition around food and the connection to chronic disease and food. And just, it's a really fun way. And both of those programs came about like similarly because of the pandemic. We wanted to make people feel not as disconnected. Creaky Kitchen has been going on strong. So I appreciate that you do that. Sounds like an amazing group. Have you been able to, with all of this advocacy, with all the work that you do, have you found the right treatments for migraine? If you have, or if you haven't, what are some of the challenges, and what does it feel like when you do find something that works?
I think right now I'm finally on a pretty good treatment regimen. I think the biggest thing that is helping me is the actual stuff that's not given to me by doctors. Throughout the day, I have sunglasses that I wear indoors, and I use ice pack hats. I do a lot of, I'm in the quiet quite a bit. I'll use earplugs when I go out sometimes because I enjoy doing things with friends, but I kind of have to have a little migraine kit with me. I have some of those ginger candies and stuff to help with the nausea that'll come up out of the blue and that kind of stuff. So it's those little things that actually help. And I use one of the devices to help kind of take it down a little. throughout the day. And then, I do use several of the prescription medications daily. And then I use one of the monthly medications. So I feel like it's taken a long time. I've tried so many different types of things to make different regimens, but this is finally, knock on wood, something that is working for me right now.
So important that you acknowledge that it's like multimodal and multifaceted when we're looking at how we tackle these really hard diseases like migraine to make sure that we're not settling. So it's amazing that you've been able to find both pharmacological and non-pharmacological ways to manage. And I hope your migraine bag and kit is cute because it's important to have fun with these things. And I was talking with another person on Talking Head Pain, and like, I have my migraine bag. I made sure I picked one that I really like because when I'm feeling crummy and I need to get medication from it or something, I want to say, oh, this is nice. And it's a nice moment.
I like that.
For people that don't live with migraine or a chronic disease, what do you think they need to know to make the world better for people like us?
I think it's important for people that don't live with chronic health conditions to really listen to those that do, and to just take that time to validate the person. I think so much can happen just by simply validating that they are going through a tough time, and that can be huge. And just some subtle changes, sometimes when I'm out to eat with friends, I'll ask the server if they could turn down the volume of the music in the restaurant. And if I tell them why, they're so generous and they will do anything they can to try and lower that music. And, not very many people have a problem with that. But it's just, I think people are genuinely willing to make accommodations for us. They just need to know that you need those. So I think we need to ask for what we need, and I hope that other people will just be willing to listen.
I really appreciate your time and energy, Laura, and all that you're doing for the community. Thank you so much for joining me today on Talking Head Pain.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking Head Pain, the podcast that confronts head pain head on. If you like this episode, please give it an honest 5-star rating and subscribe so you never miss another one. I'm Joe Coe, and I will see you next time.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.